Welcome back. I want to ask this question. Why are Keir Starmer, the police, the Crown Prosecution Service, the authorities generally, so terrified of concerned citizens, perhaps not quite feeling good about Islam? What I'm talking about is Southport. As soon as there's some kind of the spectre, potentially, allegedly, of Islamic terrorism, they bring the shutters down. We mustn't know about this. We can't be trusted. So up in Southport, Nigel Farage said from day one, I think there are things here we're not being told. He was right, of course. You know, we were told that I don't want to get into the suspect. The suspect's an 18-year-old guy. But we were told he was a Welsh lad from Cardiff. Well, let's just say there was more to him than that. When he was charged with three alleged murders, and attacking 10 other people in the Southport dance hall horror, that was it, we were told. 3 months later, he's charged with producing the deadly poison ricin and possessing an Al-Qaeda manual. Possessing an Al-Qaeda manual is against the Terrorism Act. The police are still saying, just because of that, it doesn't mean to say we suspect terrorism. Well, the rest of us do. You know, don't be stupid. Don't insult our intelligence. I mean, what is this obsession with us not knowing about this kind of thing? It's supposed to be a free country. Let's talk to the founder of the Together Declaration, Alan Miller. Welcome, Alan.
Good evening, Kevin.
Why do you think Nigel Farage continues to catch so much flack for merely asking why it is that the British public were kept in the dark about the goings-on in Southport?
Well, it's remarkably worrying that both Nigel Farage and others who've been asking questions are demonised in this fashion. In fact, where contempt of court is being used, where all sorts of measures have been done for people posting things and also for just shouting or saying things on protests. I think we all need to take a step back and say, what is the country we want to live in? Are we allowed to debate and discuss? Are we allowed to know what's going on? There is obviously a concern whenever a case might be prejudiced. It's important that it's not. But taking the country as fools actually creates the very conditions that people like Keir Starmer and others are saying they don't want. When people understand that they're not being told everything, when they are purposely being told some things, it's presented as a young child or someone that's, don't talk about their background or anything like that, and people then speculate. And by the way, in a free society, we should be allowed to speculate and debate. Right? That is not something that should ever be illegal. Can we speculate? We should remember some people want to speculate and allege things all the time, right? The people that are running things at the moment seem to think it's okay to speculate that people are far right, that they're conspiracists, that they're extreme. They do it all the time with a huge section of the British public that are concerned about everything from borders to integration to values. So they think it's okay for them to speculate about, certain things, but not others. And I think the British public, who are very calm and decent, are fed up with this kind of two-tier approach. We should remember, Kevin, that Jonathan Hall is actually KC, King's Counsel, is the government's terrorism czar, as well as Lord Cartile, who's a crossbench peer, right? He's not of any one particular fraternity, and he was a former independent reviewer of terrorism legislation. Both of them have come out and said more information should have been made public. It would avoid people coming up to any other conclusions. It would treat them seriously. But here's the rub, Kevin. We've seen it with things like the counter-disinformation unit being brought in. We've seen it with how we were treated during lockdowns. The idea that we have to be nudged, that we have to be told certain things, we have to be spun, that the public can't be trusted, and that actually only some people, the good and the great, or with the right type of ideas, should be allowed to discuss and debate and say things. And people are getting very upset with being treated in this fashion. It's dangerous for democracy and it's unacceptable. So I think, certainly at the Together Association and Declaration, we've constantly made the point that we don't want just technocrats just telling us all the time how it is. We need to be able to engage We need to be able to have our voices heard. We need to have the public treated seriously. We're grown up. And that's something that we're going to continue to argue for consistently. There's going to be more things we're doing with various groups about this. And I think it's really essential that we can ask these questions and get some clear answers.
Exactly right. And there's this particular terror on the part of the authorities, I think, Alan, about the public potentially, sort of thinking bad of Islam. So when you get a potential Islamic terrorist element entering any fray, that's when the shutters come down. They don't want to tell us, like, the soldier, Lee Rigby. We weren't told that this was, in fact, a terrorist attack. Ariana Grande, the concert in Manchester, we weren't told at first about that. And now we know the truth about Southport, which, frankly, is an utter scandal. Utter scandal. They treat us like children. They also fear that if we have information that perhaps does not necessarily put Islam in a good light, that there'll be kind of untold hell. They have this real kind of protective instinct towards the Muslim community, who I think also are being infantilized by this policy. They should be treated like adults as well. They, obviously, nearly every Muslim is a fine, upstanding citizen. Very, very few are not. Just because there may or may not be a terrorist element involved in Southport doesn't mean I think terribly of the Muslim community, and yet that's what Starmer clearly thinks we're going to think.
Yeah, so we've got this problem. I mean, it's also, we saw it with the Lieutenant Colonel in Gillingham, Kent recently. We're often told that attacks are to do with mental health. Completely patronises the British public, who know that something's up. When you hear of a certain type of attack that's not a normal British crime, the stabbing of multiple children and people, you have to pause and go, well, gosh, that's not an everyday occurrence. Whether not with gang crime, not with anything like that, right? Now, of course, there can be incidents where there might be someone who's like deranged and lost their faculties. But we know from London Bridge and a range of other incidents that there are terrorist attacks on this country, and that it takes a certain form and pattern quite often. And actually, if you want to avoid over speculation on too much, you want to be clear with the public and reassure them. You can do that in a way that doesn't jeopardize the court case. You can do it very clearly, and you can treat people like grown-ups. The thing is that we face a situation, our prospects, that there's diminishing trust, not just in politicians, it's been there for a while, but it's dangerous where there's diminishing trust with the police. It's got to be without fear or favour. When senior officers let down rank and file officers by doing this, because there's a certain ideological concern about doing things, that's very worrying. You're absolutely right. The majority of the Muslim community, are decent, hardworking, fine people. They do not want to have this as part of presented to them. But we also have to discuss openly in a civil society, a free society, someone like Bassem Tibi, right, who wrote a very interesting book about Islam and Islamism, and talking about the distinction between the two, right? One is a religion that's millions of people in Britain and around the world, a major, important, central, key religion. And the other has been something that since 1926 in the Muslim Brotherhood has had very particular outlook and very particular goals and aims. Radical jihadism is one part of that, but also the contempt for democracy, the disgust with free speech, and a range of other Enlightenment values. And in a free society, we cannot be terrified into not discussing this. We've seen this from Salman Rushdie on, the idea that you must not offend, the idea that the elite panic and backtrack. And, Charlie Hebdo should have concerned everyone internationally. Lots of people did come out and say that. But we face the prospect that, we have to be able to talk about why democracy and freedom is so important, why our values are so important, and people coming here or being here should all subscribe to them. There's a reason why millions of people want to come here. That's one of the reasons, because we have this brilliant society. It could be much better in some ways, but it's a whole lot better than many other places. But we are the custodians of people who fought and died for freedom and free speech, and the current contempt of the public that thinks the majority of the public are all out going to be deranged and doing things is really insulting. Also, Kevin, we should remind ourselves there were some people that did violent and terrible acts. They should be held accountable in the full court of the law. But it was a tiny group of people. The idea that that's then generalised to all protesters, and then that's generalised to anyone who's got concerns about integration and borders, and then smearing everyone like that, is beyond contemptuous. It's unacceptable. So we would encourage everyone to get involved in saying, we're going to be lobbying MPs and councillors and saying we want to have our voices heard. CPS and everyone should know that we need to have the information that's out there and to stop this trajectory, and also to not have Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper impose all sorts of draconian measures on us because people are asking questions or speculating and not being clear, but in a free society want to understand what's happening. This is of utmost urgency and people should all get involved in that.
All right, Alan, well said. Thank you very much for your time. Let's talk again soon. Alan Miller, co-founder of the Together Declaration there. I mean, is it about time the government and the authorities and the police and the Crown Prosecution Service started treating us like adults and stopped treating us like children? Tell us the truth.